Section 27 of the Fables of Pilpay. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Fables of Pilpay by Anonymous, translated by Abdullah Ibn al-Muqaffa and Joseph Harris. Fable 19. The Wolf, the Fox, the Raven, and the Camel. In former ages, continued Kohotorb, there were a crafty raven, a subtle fox, and a bloody wolf, who put themselves into the service of a lion that held his court in the wood, near a certain not much frequented highway. Near this place a merchant's camel once, quite tired with long travel, got rid of his burden and lay down to rest himself and, if possible, preserve his life. In a few days after, having recovered his strength, he rose up and, ignorant of the governor of these territories, entered into the lion's wood with a design to feed. But, before he had spent an hour travelling into it, he was astonished with the appearance of the lion, whose majestic gait and aspect soon informed our traveller that he was monarch of the place. The camel, who at first sight expected nothing but to be devoured, was rejoiced to find this, and humbly offered him his service. The lion accepted it, and after he knew by what accident he came into the place, asked him what he would choose to do. "Whatever your majesty pleases," replied the camel very submissively. "Thou art at thy liberty," replied the lion, "to return if thou likest it, and be the slave of thy former master, or if thou wilt rather live with me, thou hast my sacred and inviolable promise that thou shalt be secure from all injuries." The camel was very glad of this, and remained with the lion, doing nothing but feed without disturbance, so that he soon became plump and fat. One day after this, the lion, in his hunting, met an elephant, with whom he encountered, and returning wounded to the wood, at length he was nearly starved to death. While he lay on his deathbed, however, the raven, the wolf, and the fox, who lived only upon what the lion left after he had been at the field, fell into a deep melancholy, which the lion perceiving, said to them, "I am more sorry for your sadness than for my own wounds. Go, and see if you can meet with any venison in the purlieus adjoining. If you do, return and give me notice, and, notwithstanding my wounds, I will go and seize it for you." Upon this, away they went, left the lion, and held a council all three together. Said the wolf, "If I may speak among you, friends, what good does this camel do here? We have no correspondence with him, nor does the lion get anything by him. Let us kill him, and he will keep us alive for 2 or 3 days, and by that time the king may, perhaps, be cured of his wounds." This advice, however, though the hunger much pleaded in its favour, did not please the fox, who affirmed that the camel's life could not be justly taken away, since the lion had given his word and solemn promise that he should live unmolested in the wood, for that such an action would render the king odious to all posterity, who would look upon him as a perfidious monarch, who gave protection to a stranger in his dominions only to put him to death without a cause, whenever he could make an advantage of his destruction. On this the raven, who had as hungry a belly as the wolf, together with a great deal of wit and as much malice, took upon him to reconcile both these opinions, saying that there might be a fair pretence found to colour the death of the camel. "Stay here," continued he, "till I return, and I will bring you the lion's consent for his destruction." So saying, away he went to the lion, and when he came into his presence, making a profound reverence, and putting on a starved and meagre look, said, "May it please your majesty to hear me a few words. We are almost famished to death, and so weak that we can hardly crawl along. But we have found out a remedy for all this, and, if your majesty will but give leave, have contrived how we shall have a feast." "What is your remedy?" answered the lion, hardly able to open his jaws for weakness and anguish. "And what the feast you propose yourselves?" To whom the raven replied, "Sir, the camel, whom you once met with in the wood, lives like a hermit in your kingdom. He never comes near us, nor is he good for anything but to satisfy our hunger. And in regard your majesty wants good and wholesome diet in your present weak condition, I am surgeon enough to venture to assure you that camel's flesh must be very proper for you." The lion, who was of a truly noble disposition, was highly incensed at this proposal of the raven, and very passionately exclaimed, "Oh, what a wicked and treacherous age this is! Vile and cunning as you are, for I have long known you, Corvo, for so was the raven called, how can all your sophistry prove it lawful in a king to be faithless, and violate ascertained promises?" "Sir," replied the raven, "far be it from me to attempt to prove that. But may it please your majesty, I cannot but remember, upon this most urgent occasion, that great casuists hold it for a maxim that a single person may be sacrificed to the welfare of the whole nation. Or, should not this be entirely satisfactory to your majesty, perhaps there may be some expedient found to disengage you from your promise. Upon that the lion bowed down his head with fatigue and anguish, as if to consider of it, and the raven returned to his companions, to whom he related what discourse had passed between the king and him. And now, said he, let us go to the camel and inform him of the unfortunate accident that has befallen the king, and of his being likely to starve, and then lay before him that since we have spent the greatest part of our lives in peace and plenty under the king's reign, it is but just that some of us now should surrender up our own to prolong his days. In pursuance of this discourse, we will engage the camel to accompany us, and go to the king and offer him our 3 carcasses, striving at the same time which shall be most free of his flesh to serve his majesty for his present nourishment. The camel, perhaps, will then be willing to follow our example, and offer to sacrifice himself in the same manner, and then we will take him at his word. This they all readily agreed to, and, in short, acted their parts so well that they took the camel with them to the king, to whom the raven thus addressed himself. Sir, said he, seeing your health is of much more consequence to the public good, and more precious to us than our own lives, suffer me to show the just sense I have of my duty, by offering up my own body to you to appease your raging hunger. What a goodly collation you offer to his majesty, cried the fox, well instructed in the part he was to act in this design. You that have only a little skin, and 3 or 4 dry bones, are a precious bit to satisfy the king, who, I warrant you, could feed at this time like a glutton after a 3 days' fast. I have better flesh, and more substantial than yours, and have so much true sense of my duty, as I hope every one of his majesty's subjects has, especially those who, like us, have tasted of his favours, that I am as desirous as yourself to reprove my gratitude and love to my sovereign. And, turning to the lion, Sir, said he, let me entreat your majesty to eat me. After these, the wolf played his part. Sir, said he, your majesty must have more solid diet to refresh your hungry stomach than these can afford you, and I think myself a banquet much more proper to regale you. The camel, on this, unwilling to appear less affectionate than the rest, when it came to his turn, all you 3, said he, are not enough to satisfy the king's hunger, but though he had not eaten a mouthful these 3 days, I alone am sufficient to restore him to his health. Then said all the rest, this camel speaks reason. His flesh is excellent, dainty, and worth your majesty's taste. How happy will he be to leave to posterity such an example of zeal and generosity. And, so saying, they all fell upon him and tore him to pieces before he could speak another word. This fable shows you that when several conspirators combine together in the contrivance of an enterprise, they easily bring it to pass. You are perfectly in the right, said Dimna, and, for my part, were I in your condition, I would defend my life, and, if I must perish, fall like a warrior, not like a victim of justice at the gallows. He that dies with his sword in his hand renders himself famous. It is not good to begin a war, but, when we are attacked, it is ignominious to surrender ourselves like cowards into the enemy's hand. This is right and proper counsel, replied Skohotorb, but we ought to know our strength before we engage in a combat, for, if we attack our enemy rashly and imprudently, we may, too late perhaps, remember the famous story of the angel ruler of the sea, which I will tell you. End of section number 27.